포항 영일만 앞바다에서 최대 140억 배럴에 달하는 석유와 가스가 매장되어 있을 가능성이 매우 높다는 결과가 나왔고, 우리나라 전체가 천연가스는 최대 29년, 석유는 최대 4년을 넘게 쓸 수 있는 양이라고 판단됩니다.
14 billion barrels. That was the projection for what was set to be the largest gas find South Korea has seen since the 1990s. In June 2024, the presidential office announced findings of a potentially massive oil and gas reserve 40 kilometers off the coast of the southeastern city of Pohang. They called it the Blue Whale. It's the largest of 7 promising structures in the EC, with potential deposits capable of meeting Korea's natural gas demand for roughly 29 years. Officials even declared the yields could exceed more than 5 times the market value of Samsung Electronics. Yes, that's Samsung. If we're talking money, we're looking at roughly US $1.56 trillion being generated from commercial production between 2035 and 2065. There's just one teeny tiny problem. For a project that has so far cost the government-run National Oil Corporation a whopping US $69 million, the massive Blue Whale might be more of a big bust. While preliminary results from the initial drilling phase have indicated the presence of gas, government assessments have determined that the levels were way below what was necessary to be commercially viable. The results have rendered further exploration of the initial drill site essentially a no-go, and the project's fate is altogether uncertain. Despite this, the government has vowed to keep drilling, hopeful the remaining 6 sites in the Blue Whale area will have better results. And despite an only 20% estimated success rate, stakeholders are doubling down, insisting the only way to be sure is to drill. Should the Blue Whale project fail entirely, the economic and environmental losses will obviously be astronomical. The scarier part though, is that even if it succeeds, there still might not be much to celebrate. If forecasts hold true, global demand for natural gas is set to decline by 79% by the year 2050. That's the same deadline Korea has set for achieving carbon neutrality, and a full 15 years before the projected end of commercial production in the EC area. Yet, the Korean government remains committed to investing billions of won into a huge gas project with questionable prospects and a carbon footprint that will make carbon neutrality by 2050 virtually impossible. The math, as some say, is not mathing.
The Blue Whale project is, in many ways, a step backwards for Korea. We're at a pivotal moment. Global Energy Climate Institution like IPCC shows that to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees, oil and gas demand must drop sharply. In 2024, clean energy investments have surpassed fossil fuel spending at a ratio of 2:1. Here in Korea, that demand is expected to fall by 16% compared to 2023 levels by the year 2036. On the other hand, the amount of renewable energy, solar, offshore, we're able to generate domestically is ready to take its share, going from 49.4 terawatt hours at 2023 levels to 205.7 terawatt hours. That's potentially 316% increase in renewable energy generation if we make the right investments and policy decisions.
A predicted fall in demand isn't the only reason investing in fossil fuel projects like the Blue Whale is a bad idea. It's also extremely expensive. Between drilling, development, and operation costs, the Blue Whale project will run into the trillions of won. And that's not even counting the cost of cleaning up the project's massive carbon emissions.
The carbon footprint of the Blue Whale project will be enormous. The Korean National Oil Corporation is arguing that replacing imports with domestic production will cancel out emissions, but that's simply not true. Greenhouse gases are released both during the development of a gas field, usually through leakage, activities like flaring, and of course, electricity is being used to operate these facilities. It means new gas expansion induces more carbon emissions. Based on the 14 billion barrels prediction, we're looking at an estimated total of 5,827.5 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions over the 30-year period of production and distribution. That's almost 9 times Korea's current emission. In a carbon neutrality scenario, that's going to cost the government and the public up to $1.7 trillion. It's simply not sustainable.
Those who support the project say it's a matter of boosting Korea's energy security by reducing the country's reliance on natural gas imports. But the numbers are clear. The Blue Whale project is going to set Korea's journey to net zero back by decades. The Korean government's continued investment in these kinds of fossil fuel ventures indicates a massive disconnect between the current direction of energy policy and the country's widely lauded carbon neutrality aspirations. With fossil fuel phase-out gaining more and more traction on the global stage, investing in declining industries runs the serious risk of piling up stranded assets. And there's nothing secure about clinging onto a sinking ship. Here's the thing, Korea has more sustainable options. The National Assembly recently passed the Offshore Wind Special Act, which eliminates much of the administrative headache associated with the permitting process for new offshore wind projects. A more stable environment for offshore wind expansion is critical for reducing Korea's dependence on fossil fuels and accelerating the country's transition to renewable energy. And that means good things for that ever so important energy security.
Looking at the offshore wind potential on the East Coast, we can get 26% more energy from wind than the minimum estimated potential gas yields from the Blue Whale sites. The Korea Energy Agency estimates the technical potential is around 76 gigawatts. In electricity terms, that's about 222.9 terawatt-hours, or almost half of Korea's annual electricity use. But obviously, this means that the sector needs investment. We need a maintenance port and a yard site for the substructure of the offshore wind platform, for example. Given it takes about 10 years to build an offshore wind farm, now is the time to get started. That's where the government, the ministry, Korea National Oil Corporation, and other stakeholders come into play. Rather than pouring funds into declining fossil fuel industry, we need to start treating increased public investment in renewable energy like offshore wind as a matter of urgency. There's much more to be gained there than from uncertain ventures like Blue Whale project. We have a chance to get this right, but we have to act now.
Clearly, there's still a lot of work to be done. With the detailed results of first-round drilling at the Blue Whale site set to be released in a few months, we're yet to see whether the government will make good on its intentions to continue the project. Good news is, we have alternatives. Alternatives made easier through climate-friendly policies like the Offshore Wind Special Act. It represents both an important step forward in the journey to decarbonizing Korea's energy mix and an incentive to stakeholders hesitant about investing in renewable energy. With an early election on the horizon, the incoming administration is in prime position to take decisive steps towards scaling back the public financing of fossil fuel projects and scaling up renewables capacity instead. This is Korea's chance to get back on track and recommit to the goal of carbon neutrality, but it must be sooner rather than later. Shifting away from fossil fuels isn't going to be easy, but small wins lead to bigger ones. And with the right policy decisions and the right investments, we can still choose a greener future. So here's to hoping we do.